Hey guys, and welcome to Coding for Kids. In this video, we are going to be talking about variables in Python. So let's get started. So let's go over the overview of this video. So very first, we're going to be talking about what are variables. Then we're going to be going over how do we name our variables in Python specifically. Then we're going to be going over some basic data types and what are data types. Then we're going to be going over output variables. So how do we display our values of variables? And then we're going to be going over multiple values. So how do we add multiple values? How do we display multiple values? And then finally, we're going to be going over global variables and local variables. So let's get started. So firstly, what are variables? Variables are containers that store data values. There is no command in Python needed to make a variable. You simply declare the variable name and then the value attached to it. So for example, you can see right here, I just have x equals 5. You don't need any command, you just put the name equal to and then the value. You can see I did the same here. I did y equals to coding for kids, and just notice the quotation marks because we are going to be talking about that in a few minutes. Then we're going to be looking at naming variables. So you can't name your variable anything you want. There are some rules that come with it. So first, variable names must start with a letter or underscore. You can't start it with like a number or anything like that. Also, variable names can only contain alphanumeric characters or underscores. So alphanumeric characters are basically all the numbers and all the letters, and then you can only do underscores. You can't do anything else. And variables are case sensitive. So for example, if you have an uppercase x, that is not the same as a lowercase x. Those are two different variables. So here you can see this is invalid because it starts with a number and you can't do that. This is also invalid because there's a hyphen and you can't have hyphens in your variable. And then you also can't have spaces. This is a very important thing. People always add spaces when they're beginning making variables or naming variables, and you can't have spaces. So if you really have like such a long variable name, some people just like to put underscores as their spaces. But again, variables should be easy to like recall and call throughout your program. So don't like name your variable something really long, like try to keep it pretty short. And this example would produce an error in the result because none of these are right ways to name your variables. Now, what are some data types? So data types are different ways of putting inputs in a variable. So your a value in like your variable is not always going to be the same. So here are some basic ones. There are many more, but here are like the ones you'll see most frequently. First, you have your string data type, and this is just like, your regular quotation marks. And you always need to put whatever message you're putting in quotation marks to indicate that it is a string. So whatever you put inside is a string inside these two quotation marks. Then you have numeric data type, which is just like numbers. So when you're assigning like a number, like data type to your variable, this is a numeric data type. Then you have a Boolean data type, and the only two value you can put in a Boolean data type is true and false. So you can't put anything else in your variable except true or false. Then you have the none data type, and it's just like none, like that's your value that you're putting in. You can't put anything else. If you're putting the none data type, you just put none. Then we have a sequence data type. So it's just like if you have multiple values you want to put inside, this would be like a sequence. So you can see this is a string because of the two quotation marks. And this is also another big thing to note here is you do need to put string or like quotation marks between each word, then comma. I've seen some people do quotation mark and then they put the last quotation mark here. That means this whole thing is a string and it'll just print it out like whole. It'll just say subscribe, like, share with the commas. So you do need to put quotation marks with each value. Then we have our dictionary data type. So this is where you have a value and then like something attached to it. So if it like is like you're like, what's your name? Rithika, age 13. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So you're kind of assigning a value. And here you can see for age, since it's not really like a string, you don't need it as a string unless you're putting in words. I didn't put quotation marks here. That indicates that it's the numeric data type. Now, if I did want to make it a string, I would put quotation marks here, and then 13 would be a string. So another thing to note is strings can't be numbers, but numbers can be strings. Because if you wanted to make like this 20 into a string or like string data type, you would just need to put quotation marks. So really, you can make anything a string if you just put in those quotation marks. That's not true for all of these. So these are all the basic data types when putting inputs in your variable. Now we're going to be looking at output variables. So how do you output variables? Like you have this variable, but how do you display it? So you can use the print function to display your values in variables. Here's an example. So we have x equals 2 and then share this video, and it's a string data type. And then you just put like print x in parentheses, and this is going to print this whole thing out. This is why we use variables. It's just like instead of saying print, share this video, it's just easier to put it this way, especially if you're going to use this like variable over and over again. Instead of writing share this video over and over again, it's easier to just have it as like one letter, and you can like recall it many times. To print multiple variables, do as so. So you can see right here, if you have like lots of variables, you can just put Python is awesome. Those are our variables. And then if you do put these commas, it automatically gives you a space. So it's going to put Python space is space awesome. So that's another cool thing about when you're like using commas. So that's how you output variables. Then multiple values in variables. So how to add multiple variables and values in one line. So for example, if you have this type of this is how you add multiple variables in one line. If you don't want to take up too much space, you can just put x comma y comma z, and then each one would have its own value. For example, x value is coding, y's value is 4, and z's value is kids. So you can put like multiple variables, as many as you want, in one line. This does get confusing at times, especially if you have like lots of like long variables, or if like the values are really long, it can get confusing. So make sure you don't really get confused when using this technique. Also, one value in multiple variables, you would just put x equals y equals z equals coding for kids. And then if you do this, it's going to print out coding for kids 3 times. So just also look at the result of this. And unpacking a collection. So we have coding for kids, which is our variable, and then equals to subscribe, like, and share. Then you can put x, y, z equals coding for kids. What this is going to do is similar to this result right here. So it would be x equals subscribe, y equals like, z equals share. So this is how you unpack the collection. And then when you print all of these, it's going to say subscribe, like, share. So this is how you unpack a collection. Now, global and local variables. So global variables are variables created outside a function and can be used anywhere in a function or anywhere in the program. So for example, we have our x equals coding for kids, and then we have a function, and it says define YouTube, print subscribe to plus YouTube. So basically, this global variable can be used anywhere in our program. Even if I were like 20 lines down, I could call this function again, or call this variable again, and I could still be able to use it. I can use it in a function and anywhere in the program. Now, local variables are variables that are created inside a function and can be used only in that function. So you can see right here, we have x equals coding for kids and print subscribe to coding for kids. And what would happen here is if you wanted to use this x variable outside the function, you can't, because it's called in the function, so it's only in the function. Like you're ending this function right here. So if you wanted to like call this like x variable like 20 lines down, you can't because it's only in that function. So if you want to call it like anywhere you want, then you would need to put it outside the function. So that's a local variable. So these are our main types of variables when you're talking about functions. So to review, we first learned about variables and what are they. Then we looked at how we name our variables specifically in Python, where we then looked at some basic data types and what different values we can put in variables. Then we learned about how to output our variables. So because like we have a variable, so how do we output that variable or how do we display that variable in the values in that variable? And then we looked at multiple values. So how do we add multiple values in our variable? And finally, we looked at global variables and local variables. So guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe to Coding for Kids if you didn't already. Be sure to share this with your friends and family. And also comment down below what ideas you have for future videos. And don't forget to like this video. Thank you for watching. I will link this slideshow in the description. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys!